Welcome to Season 2, Episode 12 of the Be Conscious podcast. This episode is the third in my series of awakenings, where I will be interviewing remarkable individuals who have made their transition into their most authentic selves and works. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Pam Christian. Here we go.
Welcome to the Be Conscious podcast, the show that brings you enlightened perspectives on the frequency of money, life's many challenges, and those heavy feelings that may be holding you back from living your best life. And now your host, Dr. Susan Nicholas.
Pam Christian is a mindset coach, motivational speaker, and host of the Juice podcast, where she features in-depth conversations with thought leaders across a range of industries. Pam's work encompasses helping her clients transform their lives by eliminating self-created barriers, maximizing their full potential, and dramatically increasing their effectiveness on both a personal and professional level. Pam has become a highly sought-after social media influencer whose mission is to help heal humanity by inspiring and motivating others to live their best lives. Prior to coaching, Pam built a successful career in real estate, where she was ranked among the 100 most influential realtors in New Jersey. Pam, welcome to the Be Conscious podcast. As I mentioned earlier, I was really interested in interviewing you because you are an individual who has experienced some level of awakening or conscious awakening, and I have seen, like, through your LinkedIn profile, through our times on Clubhouse, this transition that you are involved in or currently going through from what was a more secular work in real estate to more conscious work. And I'd love to go back a little bit to how your life began and, how you began this journey, I guess, of introspection.
Sure. That's a great question. And my life began, kind of, I want to say average, but no one's life is average. So it almost takes that away from it. But, your basic life, but then, life throws you adversities and challenges and also joys and love and great stuff. And we have to navigate all of that. So how we navigate it really determines, our outcome at any given moment. And I was not a good navigator. I had some, pretty severe trauma that I went through at a young age, and then came from a really supportive family, but they didn't always, they often missed the mark, but so loving and supportive. So I always had that feeling of care and love and there was someone there for me. But sometimes when you miss the mark, no matter how much of you have, you're not able to, you leak out, your issues leak out. So, my younger years, I was kind of what I like to call myself a mess. And I don't say that with any kind of lack of compassion to myself, because I completely understand how I was a mess. And I was just trying to figure it out and just constantly trying, but sabotaging myself, hurting others, and just going down this path of self-destruction, which went into my teen years. And because I had the support of my family and the love, I think it could have been a lot worse, but there was always this voice kind of guiding me. So I would push the envelope so far, but never, that extra bit that would really, damage me or whatever. It would just be not crossing the line, just getting there and maybe putting my foot over, but just one foot over. And I remember, I can't remember if I had two experiences, and I remember, the first time actually becoming that first moment of awareness that you're talking about. And it was in my late teens, and I had it before my late teens, but I remember it. And I remember picking up a book, and it was an Anthony Robbins book. And I often say my late teens, and I confuse it, to be honest, because you know how memories are. And so it might have been a little bit earlier. And I didn't even know who Anthony Robbins was at the time, but I picked it up and it was talking about choices. He was talking about choices, and it was Awaken the Giant Within. And he was talking about choices. And it was in that moment that I realized I had a choice. I could continue down this path, or I could choose a different path. I had no idea what that different path would look like. I had no idea what it would mean to my life or how I would even make that different choice. But the power of realizing that I could do it was pretty monumental. And honestly, my whole life up until that point, I was fighting upstream. It was not a flow state. It was not relaxed. There was constant. I was in fight or flight. I had PTSD. It was intense. And actually, I look back on myself with such compassion, like, holy cow, how were you surviving everything you were going through and all of that? And so that first moment of choice. And the thing was, the choice that I decided to make was one that wouldn't serve me. And other than the fact that I had the 3 most amazing kids that could ever be born in this world, that served me. But other than that, it was choices that society was telling me to make. But they were choices that were more in line with health for me, wellness for me, rather than the self-destructive choices I was making. So it was getting me on the path. So then I checked all the boxes. I got the career. I met my fiance, or at the time, my boyfriend at the time, actually, when I think I was 22. And, it was, things were all looking up for me. And I'm like, yes, finally, it's my turn. I deserve this. Like, this is what it's supposed to be. So I checked all those boxes, had the 2 dogs, had the house. I had the career. He had the career, had the kids, which, yes, those kids. Yes. That was what everything was meant for. All those boxes that I checked were meant for me to have those kids and have those kids be in my life, because they are the biggest gift to me. And I had always wanted to be a mom from a young age. I wanted 8 kids. I wanted to adopt 4 and have 4. And so I have 3 kids that are more than fulfilling. And so after that, I was left empty. And I was like, wait, I listened to Anthony Robbins. Then I was introduced to Gary Null. I don't know if you know who he is. And went on this health journey. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease when I was 17. So I had started with your traditional doctor, and the meds weren't working for me. So I went with this holistic practitioner that I was gluten-free when I was 17, so it was cardboard. It was not popular back then. And so I started to make these changes in my life and realized that those boxes that I was checking weren't really serving me, even though I was told they would, and that's what I needed to do. And that was the prescription to have a happy life. And so my second awakening was around the time that I realized that, wait, I followed the rules. I made the changes. I made the choice to choose me, but those rules didn't apply to me. And that kind of went back to the beginning of my life. Like, I was always an outlier in my opinion. I was always trying to fit in, but someone different. And my soul was always screaming at me, stay with me. And the outside world was always like, no, come with us. And I had always listened to the outside world. So it was my first time where I was really connecting with my soul and my own voice and myself, and kind of trying it out and trying different things on for size to see if they fit or if they didn't fit, and figuring out what would work and didn't work. And so it was, at that second awakening, that I made some significant decisions which were one was to change my career and really not be part-time anymore, but go all in a heavy way. And it was that kind of a career that, I ran a real estate team, and it was a successful real estate team. And you get the accolades and the awards, and it's financially very lucrative if you're doing well. And I also, had a great schedule, so I could be home with my family. And then, it kind of all came crashing down. My spouse at the time and I decided that we were going to split up, and that was never anything that I thought. So I had to reevaluate, because I was that person that said, I sat on my high horse and was like, I'll never get divorced. No way. Everyone else, they're just giving up, or they're not figuring it out, but that's not something I would ever do. So it was shocking to my own self that it was something that I was doing, because I always said, I don't understand. People just don't, I was just so high and mighty. And so it really made me look at myself and humble myself and say, wait. And it was almost like the universe saying, ha, you think so? Well, here, we'll give you a plate of divorce. See how that feels. And so when that happened, I decided that I wanted to be really conscious and purposeful about that divorce. And, my kid's dad, my former spouse, maybe he wouldn't see it that way. Maybe he'd say you weren't conscious or purposeful at all. And it was a mess. I have no idea. But what I do know is everyone has their own story and their own perspective. So whenever I say stuff about this one aspect of my life, I like to, add that caveat in, because this is just my lens through how I saw it. And so that's when I kind of had that second wake up, and I was like, wait, I told my kids that this was going to be an adventure, that this was not the 1950s. And it did not mean they were from a broken family or they were broken people, and that they are amazing and awesome, and that they are going to be part of changing the narrative. And they were young. They were 5 and 7 and 7. And so we, navigated that. They're now 19, 19 and almost 17. So obviously, we navigated that and are in a different place now. And they did such a beautiful job. I was very purposeful about my parenting. And I'm not saying purposeful means perfect at all, because I slipped up many times. Always apologize, though. And I would just add that in. Always apologize, not just to your kids, but if you slip up, just own it. Because the best thing you can do is you give permission to people to make mistakes and to own their mistakes also, and to take accountability and responsibility for them. So anyway, so that was my second wake up. And then I've had many ones through awakening, and then I've had many ones throughout. But I think my last one was, and actually, I think if we all have mini ones, it's about being awake enough to notice those mini ones. I wanted to, at a certain point, I realized I was done with my real estate career. And I live in a small town, and I had a really solid career. I'm not saying it was the number one or the best, but it was solid for the time I was doing it. It was top. And I wanted to leave, and I wanted to leave while I was at the top. And I loved my career and I loved my business. I was just done. I'm an entrepreneur. I was just done with it. And my dad and I would go back and forth because, I'm a single mom, 3 kids, wanted a certain lifestyle. He was nervous for what was to come. He was a businessman. He knew certain things. So we would go back and forth. At the end, he said, do what makes you happy. And that's most important. But before I got to do that, he got very sick, or he didn't get very sick. He went into the hospital and 3 weeks later passed away. I didn't mean he got very sick. Sorry. So that was a partial awakening for me. Like, wait, what just happened in my life? He wasn't feeling well, but it wasn't like he had this major diagnosis and we knew he was dying, and he hadn't been feeling well, and he went into the hospital and never came out. So that's sobering. That makes you start thinking. And so I obviously had to table anything with my business because I needed to take care of my mom. I needed to kind of get her set up. And unfortunately, a year later, my mom passed away. And so the beautiful thing was I had 3 weeks with my dad. We got to say every single thing we ever needed to say. And then the year after, my mom and I had that experience because her death was extremely unexpected and sudden. So it wasn't like I had a few weeks to say goodbye, but because my dad had died, we kind of had a love fest for a year. And so after that, that was my next awakening. Like, what are you doing? This isn't what you want to be doing anymore. It's great that you love your real estate business. It's great that you're making a ton of money. All this stuff is great, but inside of you, your soul is screaming to you, it's time to move on. And it's been 2 years, or actually 3 years at this point, since I had even been thinking about it. So the first year, then my dad passing, then my mom. And so I was just like, I'm doing it. And so I packaged up my business, found someone to sell it to, sold that business, and had no idea what I was doing. And I think you know me a little to know that probably doesn't sit well with me. And I've always been meditating, and I've always been on this path to learning myself more, but really having nothing to do and nothing to distract myself and really going inwards was deeply, deeply painful, because I needed to go and heal. And so were you going to ask something? Sorry.
Well, you said a lot, and your journey, you and I have a very similar journey. But I think what happened to me is that I recognized that all of these awakenings all led back to something in my childhood. And I wondered if you were comfortable sharing with us. You talked about trauma and you're a mess and self-sabotaging, this path of self-destruction. Can you take us a little back to what that was?
I'm not going to talk about the specific trauma right now. I just wrote a book about it. It's going to be coming out, and I don't really want to go into that, but I could tell you about what the self-sabotaging looked like, if that's what you mean. Or were you asking like what happened?
Well, I was asking what happened, but that could be definitely a segue to your book, which I was going to get to after our mid-roll. But I was just curious because when you talked about this path and these couple of awakenings and this checking all the boxes and the I deserve it, and here's the kids, here's the house, here's the husband, here's all this. I had that same journey. Different career, but literally the blueprint exactly the same. And when I hear this, I recognized on my conscious journey and my mini awakenings and my big grand old awakening in 2012 that it all led me back to my childhood. And so I'm sure we'll get into that, but I really wanted to, if you don't want to discuss the trauma itself, that's fine. But I just suspect, that I say all these journeys of external validation, all this outward stuff of achievements, of money, of titles, of status, of all this stuff, I believe is a journey out that leads us right back home, like right back to ourselves, right back to that child, that inner person, the one that was traumatized in whatever way. I mean, I'll give you an example. My early traumas were growing up in deprivation, not having my mother around, being abandoned, being the granddaughter of a prostitute, having lots of shame around money, around security. My mother being neglectful of us. I had lice growing in my hair. We were unclean. We were hungry. And there just a lot of instability. My parents divorced when I was still in diapers. Don't even have memory of them being married. And so it's just when I look at all that has brought us to this interview today, it all circles back into the soulful wound, the one that led to the emptiness after all the boxes were checked. It lies within our childhood self. And so I just was curious if you were willing to share that with us. But given that you've written a book, can you tell me, you said, I decided after lost dad, 3 weeks, very unexpected, love fest with mom for a year, then cheese passes, and then I decide I'm going to do it. What is the it?
The it was jumping into something new, which wasn't a new career, and letting go of the old. So the career that was no longer serving me, it wasn't fulfilling me. It wasn't what it had been when I first started for me. And what I had been working on for 3 years was stepping out of that. And the it is exploring something new, but being okay with not knowing what it is while I'm in the exploration period. Like a lot of people, when they leave a career, they say, okay, I'm going to have this lined up. And that's great. And that's great if you know what it is. And a lot of people don't leave a career if they don't have that lineup. I just decided to jump and say, you know what, I'm going to take some time for myself. I've been working all my life. I love working, and I started working when I was like 15 years old and absolutely love it. And so this was probably the first time in my life that I would give myself a certain amount of time without like a job. Not that I was like at 15 working like a dog, but you know what I mean? I worked at like a little candy place and whatever, babysitting. And this was the first time that I was going to say goodbye to something that was super, super successful. And people were asking, why would you leave that and go into an abyss of nothingness, which meant letting go of control and loosening the grip and kind of trusting that it would evolve from the nothingness into somethingness, which it did. And it's been a beautiful experience.
And tell us what that something is.
Before that, I was just going to say, the jumping, because this is the important part to me, the jumping from the something to the nothing and hopefully into another something is really a special experience if you ever get to have that. And it doesn't mean it's a good experience, because some of the things that we do to serve ourselves are choices that we make for ourselves, but that doesn't mean they're easy, or that, it's like choosing the juice over the Doritos. The juice is better for me. It's going to feel better, but do I want the Doritos? I mean, I don't really want Doritos, but you get my point. Do I want the slice of pizza or whatever that thing would be? Yeah. And that's the easier choice. So I decided to make the more difficult choice, knowing that that was going to be in my best interest, even though I didn't, love every minute about it. And what I was going to say was, and then I'll tell you answer your question, was you don't have to not leave your job to do this, but going into that space of really getting to know yourself during that time is when I wrote this book that was not even intended on being a book. I was just writing. I was pouring out all that childhood stuff that you were talking about, not just the childhood stuff. It started, the book started the day I was born, about the day I was born, and ends probably a year ago, because I finished it a year ago. And so, all that time that I had in between that and where I am now really set me up for really grounding myself, anchoring and centering. And I was already on the way there. So it wasn't like I was that mess I was in my teenage years to all of a sudden making these transitions, but I dove deep and I healed. And the healing process is super painful, by the way, but so rich. And what I came up with was my mission in life, not in my work, in my life. And if it translates to my work, that's beautiful. But if it doesn't, that's okay too. And so what I realized was I want to serve others. That's what I want to do for the rest of my life, is serve others. Serve you, Susan, serve my kids, serve anyone and everyone I meet in any way and any way I can. So I guess
So I want to say that I definitely, I'm
Good.
sorry. I wanted to say that I definitely understand, and I have had that experience of this dismantling of the old and going from like a unknown, to me, not a nothingness, but just a path that is unpaved. And I also understand in my journey that when you embark upon this rightful path, that it is fraught with it's like hazards and challenges. It's much harder, I think, sometimes than those chosen paths, because those chosen paths had steps and books and learnings in the physical world and how to do this and mentors. But this leveling up in consciousness and awareness and doing what this service to humanity, I call it I call myself now serving humanity. There's no script, and it's very, very challenging. And I think what I have learned in my journey is that when you embark upon your rightful, like soulful path, like what is your purpose, passion, what you are meant to do, what you've been destined to do, it was in your blueprint from birth. When you finally get on it, my thought was, maybe you didn't have this thought, but my thought was, oh my gosh, I'm awake now. I'm aware. I'm going to be rewarded. Like the universe is just going to fall over itself to make sure that I have everything I need, that it works out, that I'm happy, da 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 da. But none of that happened. And I've recognized that when you're on this type of journey, this nothingness to something, this unknown, uncharted path, there is no script. You are going from your gut, from the soul of you, from your intuition. That is actually a harder journey, and in many ways more painful, because it is asking us to decondition, to unlearn, to deconstruct all that you've done all those years, all your life, and to now go by the way of trust in yourself, trust in the higher self, trust in the universe, and that it will be shown to you in divine timing. Not the third construct time, but divine timing. And so all of these things you get off the hamster wheel, and that thrust off of it is, oh my gosh, it is treacherous. And I believe that's why many people stay on the wheel. But I love that you talked about your mission, about serving others. And I want to really get into your book. what the title of it, what's it about, when is it coming out, so we can really make sure that those people that are hearing this podcast, hearing you speak, hearing me speak, have a way to connect with you thereafter. Before we do that, let's go for a short break, and we'll come back and talk about your book.
Like what you're hearing so far, make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. How would you describe your relationship with money? Did you ever imagine that your deepest feelings and beliefs about money could be preventing you from acquiring all the wealth that you desire? Click the link below in the show notes to learn more about Dr. Nicholas's highly sought-after Frequency of Money program to positively transform your relationship with money. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Now, back to the show.
So the Awakened Journey, it promises us, I believe, inner happiness, peace, awareness, self-awareness, but it doesn't promise us ease. And so I'd love to talk about you stepping out of the old and what is that looking like, and, get into this book that you've just written.
So stepping out of the old is an ongoing process. So I don't know if it's looks like one thing. To me, it looks like continuing on the path. Like you said, it's difficult, but actually when you lean into it, it's not so difficult once you get the hang of it, because there's evidence everywhere. It's just not the physical evidence that we've been taught to look for. So it's not like, oh, I got the Mercedes or the BMW after I got that raise. Instead,
Right.
It's like other kinds of signs and intuitive knowings for yourself. So, stepping outside, I get to see that outside literally in nature, but also outside, like you're talking about, I get to see that every single day. I know when I'm on the right path, and I know just by how I feel inside of myself, how my body feels, how my mind feels, how my heart feels, and how my soul feels. And
I love that you said about how you feel, like you're tuning into your feelings. Can you tell us and our listeners what, like, that difference, like when you kind of were doing stuff and you kind of knew it wasn't right versus now when you're doing things into the void, like when you don't know exactly how it's going to turn out, you don't know the path, there is no book that you just know. Can you make a distinction of how you feel now?
I mean, I have no anxiety. My nervous system is pretty calm unless it's excited in a good way. So I have a very high energy, like when I'm at my speaking events. And so my nervous system may come off a little bit more like, upbeat, or I don't want to say frantic, but there's almost an edge in that way to it. It's a little, but that's channeling my higher self. That's just a part of me. And that's what happens when I speak. And it's very more fast paced and stuff like that. And that might be seen as nervousness or anxiety, but it's actually not. It's my flow state. And it's actually when I am at my best, when I'm serving others in a public forum. But it's just, there's no anxiety. There's no nervousness. There's no flutters. There's no overthinking. There's no questioning. And it's all because I'm connected to that higher self, source, divine, universe. You could call it God. It doesn't matter what you call it. It doesn't matter what it is. And so, I have no idea what's going on with my career, but when I meditate, all I hear is keep on going. It's going to blow up, and it's going to blow up before you know it, and just keep going. So I'm listening to that. A lot of when I'm on podcasts, a lot of people or in interviews, people ask me, so what's your goal for 2021 in terms of work? And, in real estate, we used to have monetary goals, number of houses sold, all that stuff. My goal is to, enjoy the process and enjoy it. And so it's all about trusting and it all starts with getting connected. So you have to connect to that voice. You have to connect to that voice, which is within you. It's just, there's so many other voices there that you need to kind of remove so you can hear it.
Well, I love what you just brought up about connecting to this inner voice. And I like to make a distinction between kind of the chatter of the immature mind, the voice that always has a chip on its shoulder, something to say, that's bringing up old grievances, that's worrying about the future, that's regretting the past or having some feeling about the past, some pain about it. And versus the quieter, I say more resolute voice, the voice of the higher self, the voice of your intuition. And I like to, think of ourselves as the observer of both of those voices. Like we're not the mind chatter, and we're not even the higher self in a sense, like that more solid voice. We're the listener of it. We're the observer of it. And I think when our mind is so full of chatter and it's so loud that we just miss the voice of the intuition, the voice of the soul speaking. We don't get to hear it. And so I'm totally with you. I love that you brought that up. Can you take us a little bit into the work that you're doing now and how where you are now led to you writing your book and when you will be releasing it?
Well, so the book was nothing led me there except, my own guidance. I wasn't writing a book. I kind of was journaling and it turned into a book. So that was most of the stuff I'm doing is not planned. Most of it is as it comes to me. So that wasn't planned. And a friend said, this should really be a book after I read it to her. And I was like, really? And I sent it to some people and they're like, oh, yeah, you want this published? And I was like, I'll just do it on Amazon if I decide to. And they were like, no, you want to go get it published. So right now it's being shopped by an agent with a publisher, but the anticipated date is late fall. It's called I Hope You're Having a Great Day. I know I am. And in terms of my other stuff that I'm doing, really, I think you said, I know your mission is to serve humanity or to serve people. And I do want to serve people, but my mission is to help heal humanity by inspiring and motivating others to live their very best lives. So everything I do in my career, whether it's coaching individually, doing group coaching, whether it's public speaking and being on platforms because of COVID, Zoom stuff, my blog, my own podcast, my e-letters, that is all my way of helping to heal humanity and the messages I get from people that tell me that that's the feedback that I need to know that this is working. So the money follows from all of that. And where the career is going, I have no idea. I wake up, I tune into myself. Today's the day I'm working on my blog. I didn't know that 3 weeks ago. It's not a schedule like my old business used to be. I had it calendarized. I knew what I was doing each day. It's I wake up, I tune into myself. What's it going to be today? How am I going to serve? And I go do that. And of course, I have steady coaching clients and stuff like that. And that those are the steady things. And it's like I said, I'm watching it unfold just right by your side, Susan. I don't really know.
Well, I love that because I think to do conscious work, to do inner work, and to serve humanity, it requires us to be still in uncertainty. Because I used to have that scheduled life too. Like I felt like my life is in like 4-year plans, like, and I had all these goals and resolutions and promises to myself. And I would like be busy fulfilling that stuff and then feel disappointed in myself or let down if I didn't accomplish something. And I would do this annual thing around my birthday where I reflect on my life for the past year. And it never failed, Pam. I would come up disappointed because I had always had these big ideas and like goals for myself. And when I didn't accomplish them, I started feeling bad on myself. Like I was a loser, no matter how much I accomplished, because I was always setting myself up to fail. And I think when you come into an more aware state, when you're tuning into your higher self, to your inner self, then you give yourself grace and permission to just be, that you don't know exactly how the day is going to turn out, but that's the good part, that it's not the same day every day, that you can be surprised. I say, let the universe surprise you. And it never fails that it does. And we used to say this, I used to do a healthcare investing, that there's a positive surprise and a negative surprise, things you're like, wow, that's awesome. I didn't expect that versus, oh my God, unbelievable, And so I think the world shows us both of them. But I think what has changed within me is that when I get what I would perceive as a negative surprise or something I didn't want to happen, like I'm involved in a car accident or something doesn't, work out, I see it as something that I'm to learn from. I look at it as an opportunity for growth or introspection or just wonder, and just really the magic of it all, that there's an inherent lesson in everything. And it's an opportunity for me to raise my vibration, how you react or how you handle it. Do you lose your shit or do you stand in this universal truth, like this stalwart, like understanding, this confidence that it's, no matter what this looks like, everything is okay. And so with that, I would love to hear a little bit about, you mentioned the Pam Christian group. Is that a part of this mission, this broader mission of serving it, healing humanity and serving humanity?
So everything falls underneath that, whether it's the Juice podcast, my coaching, my book, that's the umbrella company.
Okay. Well, I'm wondering, did we cover everything? I was kind of thinking back about something that you'd want the listeners to know, and you said, I have a lot to cover, we'll talk about it. Is there anything that you wanted to share with us before we conclude the podcast?
I think a few things I would just add is, one, if you want daily motivation and inspiration, as well as fun giveaways, go check me out on Instagram at Pam Christian with 2 N's. That's really my main platform right now. And really what that is all about is serving you guys. It's about uplifting you. It's about showing you there's another way. It's about showing you things can change and just giving you a daily dose of goodness each and every day. So check that out. And just a reminder that whether you've experienced what I've experienced, your own version of it, or something worse or something less, and not as bad, it doesn't matter. The most important thing is that you start to love yourself. And we've been moved away from loving ourselves. And instead, we're supposed to love things and other people and worry about ourselves last. And that is not how it's supposed to be. When you start loving yourselves, you can start loving everything and anything, and everything becomes possible, because when you start loving yourself, your lens starts to change and you start to see the miracle in everything in front of you, the miracle in the relationships, the connections, this podcast, the miracle in your everyday life, the miracle in going to the gym, the miracle in being in a car and driving a car. Like everything becomes like, wow, this is special. And so I always say paradise is not a destination. It is a state of consciousness. It's a choice. You could be at the best hotel, at the best vacation spot, and be miserable. And you can be in your home and kind of just watching Netflix and be the happiest person you ever want to be. It's all about a decision to be that. So when you choose to love yourself, that decision becomes easier and easier every day. And then it spills out onto everyone around us. So that would be the last thing I'd want to offer you guys is choose one thing to do today after listening to this that's going to love on yourself a little bit more, and just add to it each and every day, because you guys deserve it.
Oh, Pam, thank you so much. I'm wondering, would you share with our listeners how they can best hear you on Clubhouse? Because I think you do a phenomenal job moderating rooms, and your topics are wonderful. That's how we met. For listeners that might be on the platform, how can they find you there?
Well, for users who are not on the platform, well, then you're not users, but people who want to be on the platform, I do giveaways for invitations all the time on my Instagram account. So check that out. I've already given a ton away, and now they come into my room. So I love it. And then I run a club called Energy in Motion. And within that club, I host a bunch of rooms. So one would be change your frequency, change your life. One is upgrade your environment to upgrade your life. One is purposeful parenting, step out of your comfort zone and into your power. That one is so fun because we give people challenges in the room that they have to do. So it's like, maybe one, we gave him a challenge and he had to do his first Instagram video, send it to us, and we would post it. Just funny things. And it's so fun. We have Master Your Mindset and Unlock Your Potential. Just so many great rooms. We would love to see you there. Just go find me. It's the same as my handle on Instagram at Pam Christian, and definitely join the club.
Pam, thank you so much. And I want to thank all of our listeners for taking an inner journey with us today. And I always want everyone to remember to be conscious. If you loved this episode and if today's message resonated with you, please subscribe, rate, and review. I want to know what inspired you and what conscious topics you would like to hear more about. And if you want, you can share those thoughts with me at info@susannicholas.org.
Thanks for listening to the Be Conscious podcast with author, TEDx international speaker, and conscious coach, Dr. Susan Nicholas. Be sure to connect with her to stay up to date with her latest news and works. Learn more about her conscious speaking platform at susannicholas.org/speaking. Stay tuned for the next thought-provoking episode. And whether you are coming or going, looking inside or out, remember to be conscious.